True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. We have a lot to discuss tonight. Normally, I just go through one particular case and go over it, but there's just so much on the agenda tonight, so we're going to get right after it. First of all, let's go ahead and talk about the number one sort of, I don't even want to call it a case, but number one issue that's certainly in the news tonight, and that is ICE and Alex Preddy. I have so much to say on this, but as many of you know, as my expert witness role goes in terms of what I do for a living, I have to be very careful. This is my particular area of expertise and the particular area of incidents that I work, which is called use of force and particularly federal. So I want to be very careful from the standpoint, and I've said this from the get-go, this is way too early, and it's still too early to evaluate this situation. Why? None of us have seen the body-worn camera. None of us have interviewed the agents. None of us have seen the autopsy report. None of us have seen toxicology. None of us have interviewed any of the witnesses in and around that surrounding area. What we have seen certainly are different vantage points of video, and I think that that is important. But deducing what exactly happened in that scrum, if you will, of those agents being hand-to-hand type combat with multiple people with guns, and when I say multiple people, everyone in that scrum had a gun. Mr. Preddy had a gun, and all of those agents had a gun. We hear gun, gun, gun. We see an agent going to remove a gun, and then really literally within, and I haven't put this, I have a shot timer that I use when evaluating these cases. I haven't used it yet on this, but I bet it's going to be a second, maybe a little bit longer. A shot is fired, and then multiple other shots. All I'm trying to say is this. We really need to wait to evaluate what happened under the law. And Graham v. Connor, at the end of the day, it's all about objective reasonableness, not reasonableness from the vantage point of somebody shooting a video and then people looking at it days later. No, no, no. I'm talking about you are on the ground in the throes in this exact situation. What is reasonable? Reasonable, not perfect, not what you should do. What is reasonable in terms of a response to hearing gun, 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 and looking for a gun in the throes of a fight with somebody who's resisting? All I ask, and I hope that people will do this, is just be patient for all the information to come out. Keep an open mind, and remember, it is the totality of evidence and information that is going to be evaluated, not two different angles of a video showing a scrum. So please keep that in mind. It's so difficult for me to sit back and watch people who have never, ever been in that situation, B, never had to evaluate that situation in terms of doing the investigation necessary, or C, individuals who literally want to use their own political agenda, whatever that may be, to make an analysis. And that just is not the way you can go about an investigation like this. It's just not. You have to be neutral. You have to put on your independent hat. You have to be like that BWC, which is body-worn camera, and have no politics assigned to it. Literally looking at the different pieces of evidence, piecing it all together to try to figure out how in the world all of this came about. So that's my 2 cents on that case. Okay, moving on to Savannah Grace Patrick, and we're going to just go through this very methodically and to the point. Sorry, that is not her. Let me get her up on the stage. So Sarah Grace Patrick has been accused of parricide, which is killing both her biological mother and her stepfather, that was involved with raising her. Recently, and I bring this up again, so this happened last year. She was originally denied bond. And then most recently, her attorneys went back and said, listen, we think she needs bond. But unfortunately, they didn't provide any reasons. You have to, the litmus test is basically, are they a danger to the community and are they a flight risk? So, as the defense, if again a judge has already ruled that they are both of those, and in this case, actually, they also fought that she could be an intimidation issue concerning other witnesses in the case. And I think they're referring perhaps to her young sister and perhaps others. But nevertheless, it was decided by a judge about a year ago that she would remain in jail, incarcerated until it was time for trial. Trial was supposed to be in January, but it was put off only because there's mental evaluation that the defense is undertaking to figure out what is going on with Sarah Grace Patrick. I think it's important they do this. I do think there's something askew. And I will say, if there weren't evidence that at least showed probable cause, there is no way they would keep her not only incarcerated, but she's in solitary confinement because of her minor status at the time. She was 16, she's 17 now. But she's been elevated to adult status, which means she's incarcerated with other adults. And because of her youthful age, they are keeping her in solitary confinement to protect her from individuals that could possibly hurt or harm, or because this case is in the news, maybe even find some sort of, attempt to hurt her just so they could elevate their status in the prison setting or jail setting. So for this reason, she's in solitary. Judge again denied her bond. The defense came forward and said, listen, she's going to stay with a friend out of state. That's a big buzz. That cannot be the answer. The grandparents, neither of them agreed to keep her other than if they were ordered by the court. And I can just tell you, this was a red flag for me. Why don't they want to keep their own granddaughter? Another point I wanted to make on this, which I found absolutely unbelievable, is that both grandparents, and this again is on the maternal side, so basically their daughter was the one who was murdered along with her husband. Nevertheless, their own daughter has been murdered, and purportedly by their granddaughter, and yet they don't want to offer a place to stay voluntarily, that is, for Sarah Grace Patrick. I found that very telling to me, because it showed me that they seem to have some concern. I always go with actions. Anyone can spout anything, but I tell you what, if your actions don't match up to it, it doesn't mean much to me. So the fact that grandparents took the stand and said they don't think she did anything wrong, blah, 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 I'm not buying that, with the fact that they didn't want to voluntarily take her. Secondarily, this whole movie, writes to their story that both grandparents and her father, unbelievable that Sarah Grace Patrick's father also entered into this contract. And get this, and this was what was said on the stand, $100,000-ish. The grandfather was very, very evasive about the dollar amount, who was getting paid what. And then he finally came out and said, listen, it all comes down to this. It comes down to what we're able to contribute to the show. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and you're expecting her to get out? And can you imagine all the twists and turns the story could take, and that possibly those grandparents and father could be a part of those twists and turns? Of course, this judge is not going to let her out when you consider all these factors that the defense presented at this secondary bond hearing. So she's not getting out. There's no way she's getting out. Trial is set for August now. And essentially, this will give the amount of time necessary for probably multiple people in the medical field to evaluate Sarah Grace Patrick and evaluate her situation from a mental standpoint. I want to say this, and I know many of you already understand this. The fact that the defense feels this mental evaluation is this important tells me a lot. It tells me that this is probably where they're coming from a defense aspect. In other words, saying that she has some sort of mental deficiency that they're going to try to prove. That's what I'm seeing. That's my lens that I see this through. Because if she were entirely innocent, and their defense would be she wasn't there, she has an alibi, she didn't do this, there's no evidence. But no, they're seeking a mental evaluation, multiple mental evaluations. So anyway, I think that's what we're looking at there. Okay, let's move on now to, I want to talk about Anna Kepner. This is the cruise ship murder case. So purportedly, according to documents that are actually court documents related to a custody battle for her Kepner's step siblings. That stepfather the father wants his kids. And one of the reasons is, of course, what happened on this cruise ship that resulted in Anna Kepner's death. And essentially, there's this legal battle going on for custody, which has kind of subsided now. Why? Because there is a huge investigation going on in terms of whether Anna Kepner's stepbrother asphyxiated her with an arm bar and then hid her below life vests and other items below a bed on the cruise ship on a family cruise they were taking. But why has this taken so long? Oh my goodness. We are, months into this investigation, and yet nothing. We've seen nothing in terms of where we're at in terms of prosecution. And I've gone over this a little, but I want to touch on it again. The federal government, meaning the Assistant United States Attorney's offices that prosecute these cases and the FBI that investigates these cases, they have no way to handle a juvenile suspect. In other words, in federal incarceration, there's no way to keep juveniles. We don't have juvenile detention. We don't have juvenile courts. We don't have anything juvenile. The system is meant for adults. So what does that mean? Well, when a juvenile has committed a crime, one of two things that can happen. This can either be elevated, their status in terms of being tried as an adult. And that could happen in this case. Listen, if what the evidence is that we know right now, if it's true that Anna Kepner was viciously murdered, and by the way, an armbar hammer, which is something that, and actually a chokehold, however you want to term it, but basically using the arm to cut off the carotid artery, there's a big difference between somebody losing consciousness and somebody actually being murdered. And the amount of time it takes to asphyxiate in this way is a huge amount of time. Multiple minutes, sometimes a half an hour, sometimes an hour. I mean, if you look at the case like BTK as an example, Dennis Rader, he was terrible at asphyxiating his prey. Oftentimes he'd have to, apply pressure, strangle, re-strangle. It's difficult. It's a lot of time and pressure. I'm sorry to get so graphic, but I'm just trying to point out that this is a very heinous crime. And my question is, will they decide, meaning federal authorities, to elevate up to the adult, or will they go ahead and say no and handle it like most of the other cases, which means it will go to the state or local level? That is probably what makes the most sense, even though this is so heinous. Their relatives, he could say it was a crime of passion. Remember, he was taken off the cruise ship and taken immediately for medical attention based on how he was reacting after this situation happened. So we don't know what they are going to end up doing, but I can tell you all that, in my opinion, this will likely go state. If it goes federal, that means they have so much information related to what really led up to this that was so heinous that they could not not charge this federally. Okay, let me move on now to Epstein. I just have, and this picture grosses me out. I've got to tell you, Ghislaine with Epstein on this boat, it just grosses me out. So I guess I'm grossing you out too. But it just, to me, shows what a servant, that's what she was. She was a servant, and she was there in place really to just please Jeffrey Epstein, who had millions and millions and millions of dollars illegally gotten, by the way. And, the level of the crimes he committed against children is sickening. And I just post this because recently the government has come out and they said, listen, this is 3 million documents, I think 2,000 videos, photographs, et cetera, that we're releasing. And I know my team has taken a look at some of this. And believe me, some of it's unbelievable, even what they've gone through so far. And prior to those documents being released, there's a lot out there, by the way. Nevertheless, they've also withheld 3 million documents, and there's various reasons for that. A lot of it has to do with personal identifying information that they don't want out there. Some of it has to do with apparently ongoing investigations they have, which I think is promising, if that's factual. Some of it is child pornography. I bet that's probably millions of images. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say that. Thousands of images. We don't know for sure, but I think it's going to be a big part of that, which obviously they can't release. So all that is to say is the government has released, I think, what they are going to release. Everybody wants a magic pill. They want something released that is going to lead to the arrest and conviction of these Johns that were involved in going to Little St. James and Big St. James and committing these violations. I just have to be honest. I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm so sorry. I'm just saying this from the lens of being practical as to what's going to happen. He was the kingpin. Ghislaine was his XO. She got a sweet deal sitting over there in a low security, in fact, basically no security, over in Bryan College Station. That deal is so suspect. But nevertheless, the bottom line is, look through those documents as you can. I mean, people, creators, and so forth will be releasing them. I can tell you just from my team, it is jaw-dropping what is out there even before the release. Keep your eye out. I feel horrible for these victims. I just don't know that we're ever going to see justice. Okay, moving along. I want to talk about the Idaho 4 and Bryan Kohberger. A couple things. First of all, yes, Bryan Kohberger is continuing to cause problems there. Did we expect anything less? This is a guy that thinks so much of himself that he thought he was going to get away with this. Thank goodness he didn't. I think the only reason he pled was because he was worried about that death penalty. And, the bottom line is he's causing problems at that facility. I doubt he'll be transferred. Don't hold me to it, but it doesn't make any sense. This was an Idaho crime. They keep a lot of high profile. Chad Daybell is there and others. I can't believe they're going to transfer him, but some people are saying that. I just wanted to throw that out there, that is being discussed. I don't know how much credence I really give to it. Also, for those of you who don't know, I posted on this quite a long time ago. that the parents of each of the victims, and that's all of them, um, they've come together and they have filed a civil suit against Washington State University. There's, I believe, 13 instances that they can show that there were issues, big issues, with Bryan Kohberger and his actions and what he was doing there on campus that should have been sort of, pretty loud sirens as to his capabilities. But could anybody really think he was capable of crossing state lines and doing this randomly to these four victims, in a different state? No, I really don't think that. But this is the bottom line. I think the reason that they came forward with this suit is not about money. I think it's about the fact that they're hoping to raise awareness on other campuses so that other campuses can tighten up if they have individuals, particularly TAs, PhD students on their campus, really anybody on their campus that has multiple instances like this that are just ignored, and that they're not kicked out, they're not de-enrolled, or they're not, not allowed to continue on with their particular work job that they have on campus. I think that's the point of all of this, and I really believe that that's their messaging. All right, we are moving right along. I tell you, a lot to cover here. Let me see. Oh, we've got to talk about Luigi. You all, this is the biggest news, in my opinion. Look, most of us followed Luigi from the minute this happened. I know I did. I remember it was about a year ago, actually over a year ago, around November, December, when this first happened. And I tell you what, I was in expert witness training with some fellow FBI agents and other agents and officers from other agencies. And I tell you what, this hit. I remember broadcasting from my hotel room because nobody knew the name Luigi Mangione. Only we could watch the video and see the different clues about the monopoly money he left, and the backpack, meaning the price of that backpack and how he was dressed, and so on and so forth. Anyway, this case is so critical, and I think it's critical because really you're looking at somebody who pretends to be on a platform for the poor, for those who don't have a chance at good health care, for those who have been ignored in the healthcare arena, all of that. And I am not trying to downplay that because it happens, and it happens every day. But Luigi Mangione is about Luigi Mangione and elevating himself when he couldn't compete and when he couldn't exist in the real world environment. He did great when his parents were paying for private school. He did great when he was in an Ivy League school excelling. He did great until he graduated. And that's when things started falling off the rails, because no longer was he a valedictorian. No longer was he looked up to for his achievements, because he couldn't achieve. And so how can you achieve when that's the situation? You elevate yourself into a situation where you might not be famous, but you're sure as heck going to be infamous. And you take something, a stand against something. And I tell you what, if Luigi Mangione would have been arrested and said, listen, I'm taking a public defender. I don't want my parents' money. I don't want anybody's money. I stand for the people who have nothing. I stand for the people who are being disregarded, who don't get proper health care. This is what I'm about. But no, look at what Luigi Mangione did. He was all about himself. He's taking the money. He's taking the money that all these people are throwing at him and combining that with his millions and millions of dollars from his family that are paying for these high-priced, high-level attorneys. He's taking it in a New York minute, because this was never about the little guy. In fact, he shot a little guy. If you look at Bryan Thompson, the man he killed, that guy's from Iowa. He went to a state school. He's the one that pulled himself up from his own bootstraps, from parents with no means, worked his way through school, worked his way up through corporate America, and made something out of himself, not because of a handout from mommy and daddy, but because of his hard work. And that's who he decided to kill? Listen, I digress. Let me say this, and these are the two important things that happened today. This is in the federal case. He's been, remember, he has two cases going at the same time. New York has charged him with murder, actually a second-degree murder. They can't charge him with first-degree murder because there's all these different stipulations, and he doesn't meet any of them. But he's charged with second-degree murder, which still would mean life in prison if he's convicted. But he's also charged federally, and the federal system flows by so fast. These judges don't mess around, and that's why you're seeing this go so fast. But there were two huge rulings today. Number one is the backpack and everything in Luigi's backpack that he was found with when he was arrested in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Is that coming in? It's coming in, everyone. Any expert who said it wasn't coming in, just cut them off, because this was obvious it was coming in. It was coming in because of not only search incident to arrest, but if that didn't meet a particular judge's standard, the doctrine of inevitable discovery was going to. In other words, when he's arrested, they have to take everything with them. They have to do an inventory search, and all that would have been found. Period. End of story. It's coming in. It did come in, and that's everything. That's gun, silencer, his words. I hate to even call some sort of manifesto. It's just his ramblings about everything that happened. All those IDs, everything that tie him to the hostel he stayed at before those murders. It is coming in. And that, my friends, is the case right there, all in one backpack. Secondarily, what is not going to happen is he's not going to be facing the death penalty. Why? Because the judge ruled that stalking, which was the predicate offense that was being used by the government to say that the death penalty was applicable, is not considered by this judge. And she's made serious case law here saying that stalking is not a violent offense. Now, I have an issue with that. I mean, let's look at the Tepee murders. Stalked, everything that woman went through, and many other cases. Stalking is so serious, and it can be so violent. Nevertheless, this judge said, in this instance, it wasn't violent. Bam. Death penalty is off the table. So that's the huge news in Luigi. All the evidence is coming in, death penalty going out, and that's fine with me. You know, hopefully he'll be convicted, because I think he should. The facts support that. Listen, if we didn't have a video of him shooting, and I think it's clear it's him, plus the backpack with all that evidence, I wouldn't be so strong in this. Yes, he is cloaked in the presumption of innocence, and we'll see how trial, bears out. I think he'll probably go to trial. Look, these lawyers aren't going to pass upon millions and millions and millions of dollars that they're going to get to present a case against him. But if it doesn't go to trial, nevertheless, I think he will take a plea, and I think he's going to prison for the rest of his life. And that's where he belongs. All right. Only a couple more. We're going fast. Okay, two more left. Tepee. And I don't have the Tepees up here. You'll have to forgive me. I was trying to find, so I work from my computer when I do this work. And unfortunately, on my computer, I didn't have a Tepee photo saved. But this is this beautiful couple. Monique Tepee, Mo Tepee is what she liked to be called. And Dr. Tepee, he was a dentist. They had a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. They were murdered in their Ohio home in Columbus. And it was just horrible of what happened. They were shot to death. There's multiple gunshot wounds. The person that's accused is Michael McKee. Michael McKee is the ex-husband of almost 8 years of Mo Tepee. And he basically if we believe court documents, held this rage inside of him for 8 years, everyone, and finally reached his boiling point after stalking, after going to the home, after saying terrible things over the years to her. And anyway, some of the new information that we found out that I found quite interesting, particularly, is that on November 6th, he was on the curtilage. Curtilage means the outer exterior part of somebody's home. There's been a lot of speculation he was in the home. Listen, if he were in the home, then that document would have been written that he was in the home. It was written that it was the curtilage. So I believe that court document. And so that means he was on the exterior of the home, I think, doing what we call a site survey in the business, meaning taking photos, doing sketches, trying to figure out what other neighbors, when they were going to be home, when they weren't, figuring out the best points of entry, looking at all the different camera angles in and around that neighborhood. All of that, I think, is what he was doing. But what I found really interesting was before that information came out about the November 6th, I believe that's right. Nope, disregard that. It was December 6th that he was on the curtilage. And it was December 5th that I looked up Google Trends and found a huge spike in somebody who I think was Michael McKee, looking at that address, everybody. Why are you flatlined? And then all of a sudden, the day before he's there, you see that. Well, I think it's because he was Googling it. Of course, you're going to Google someplace that you're going to go look at. You're going to see everything you can about it. And so I found that nexus very interesting. Also, we found out certainly that he had been sort of threatening her, saying, I could kill you at any time. Even saying, I'm going to move in next to you, all these different inferences and things that were probably so painful and hurtful. And then when she was at a playoff game, information came in that she relayed to her friend. It was so upsetting that she left and retired to her hotel. I still believe that could have been the footage in and around her home that she would have seen on the Ring camera. And to think and look out for somebody that you were married to and know very well and probably recognize on your property had to be so upsetting, because you're wondering if all of these things he said, now we see action coming into play. Those are some of the big items that came out on Tepee. I will stay on top of this Tepee case until Michael McKee, his case is adjudicated. Domestic violence cases really get me, because no matter what a woman does, or a man for that matter, if that former spouse, former lover wants you, there's so little that can be done to protect against them. There just is. You can call the police, you can let them know, but at the end of the day, everyone, it really comes down to proper, or as much camera footage, proper door locks, deadbolts, chain locks, sadly having to keep your head on a swivel, because you never know when they might come after you. It's just horrible. And that's what this case is about. This case is about 8 years, really, of domestic violence, domestic abuse that never stopped, apparently. It continued in the form of verbal and emotional abuse and hurt toward Mo Tepee, culminating in her murder and in her husband's murder. And now we know multiple gunshots against both individuals. It's just harrowing. All right, last one I want to talk about, and that's Thomas Medlin. And again, apologies for not having this young man, 15-year-old, his photo up. He left his home and in outside of New York City, got on a train and went into the city, into Manhattan. He was also seen in the Brooklyn area, but last seen on the Manhattan Bridge. He was on the pedestrian walkway. When he was seen, there was a last ping. And then within a minute of that last cell phone ping, there was a splash in the water below the Manhattan Bridge. Now, there's no footage of him jumping. There's no footage of him walking down the pedestrian walkway afterwards. Certainly, law enforcement has intimated, and it seems clear to me because they came out, I think yesterday, and said no sign of any foul play. So when I look at all these details, clearly we see what law enforcement believes on this case, and that is that he took his own life. There's just so many questions for me. The parents are totally upset with what is being written and what police are really saying, because what they're saying is they found additional roadblocks. This was apparently a game that this individual was on, meaning Thomas Medlin was on. And they blame roadblocks. There's no doubt they think that there was some communication and that he went into the city possibly to meet somebody. This is what the parents think. Initially, police had a similar stance if you look at reports. I have exact reports where they said the police believe this. But things changed as the investigation developed, and that makes a lot of sense. Roblox came out and said, no way, there's nobody on our platform that was engaged with him in any sort of concerning way. Anyway, long story short, Roblox said, we have nothing to do with it. I know there's like 80 lawsuits against Roblox for similar type activity. But nevertheless, in this case, Roblox says, not this time. Law enforcement has changed their stance and basically hasn't said that he took his life, Thomas Medlin, but is intimating that that's what he did with the information they've released. The family is saying, that's baloney. We found now 3 more accounts. We can't believe he did this. Why in the world would he leave the area he knows, take a train, go clear into Manhattan, and walk to the Manhattan Bridge to do this? They can't make sense of any of that. And I understand their concern. Bottom line is, I tell you, that case is just something to see a young man like this. It just makes me sad. I hope that there are answers for the family soon. I can't imagine being in their shoes. The concern, the lack of answers, the fact that at least before I did this, I would say the last time I checked was several hours ago, but they still had not found him, Thomas Medlin, any body in the water, him at all in the city. Very concerning case. I'll stay on top of that as well. Okay. That wraps it up. You know, I don't like to keep you all late on a Friday night. I so appreciate you all being here and being such a huge part of chat. Anyway, think so much of you. I will go back and look at this information in the chat, although lately my chat has been going down the minute I end the stream. So I need to find out from StreamYard. They've had a lot of new changes. And I need to find out why I'm losing my chat, because before, whenever I ended, I would go back and read all of that and either incorporate your questions or thoughts into a tweet, or it would actually sit on with you all afterwards, after the stream was over, and just type, as long as it would let me type, answers to your questions. So I apologize if I can't do that anymore. I need to get to the bottom line on what is going on with StreamYard, because that's crazy that I can't do that anymore and interact with you all in this way. Everyone, thanks for being here. I hope I haven't gone on too long, but there is so much going on in the news right now that I felt needed to be addressed. To each of you, until next time, which again, every Friday, expect a show. The times may change. I was really hoping for a 1 o'clock start time, but ended up being a few hours late, but I will post it that morning. And I'll see you guys every single Friday. I might be in a baseball cap. I might be in a visor. I might be on a tennis court, but you're going to see me. We're going to talk about all this true crime. I thank you all so much. Till the next time, may justice be served.